DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NBA, and this season, new customers deposit $5 and get a bonus bet back up to $1,000 if your first bet doesn't hit. Download the app and use promo code Barry when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook, the crown is yours.
The crown is yours. Who's the crown? It's yours.
Let's jump into the Roto-World's player news. For all your player news, go to NBCSports.com. Let's take a look at the 2024 franchise-tagged players. One player on this list rewarded with a new deal. The Bears' Jalen Johnson, one of the top corners in the league, signed a 4-year extension. A lot of wide receivers being tagged. Michael Pittman Jr., a big one. Of course, we've talked about T. Higgins. Calvin Ridley not tagged by Jacksonville, probably the biggest name on the market. While Mike Evans doesn't get to the market, the Bucs re-sign him to a 2-year contract. So looking at this wide receiver market, fellas, Matthew, it feels like this actually bodes well for Calvin Ridley as all of these other guys were kept off of the market. His price tag goes up.
1,000%. That's the thing, right? I mean, with Evans and Pittman off the board, and Higgins re-signed as well. Like there's rumors that maybe he gets traded, but still, the fact of the matter is that if you want an elite veteran wide receiver, it's a deep rookie class.
It's
obviously.
him.
It's him.
Is it?
I mean, we'll see what happens if Keenan Allen or Mike Williams with the Chargers. Like, there's some other guys, but like, feels like he's the top of the list. And this was all, very lucky for Calvin Ridley. It's weird. I talked to Doug Peterson at the Combine, and he was emphatic. We want Calvin back, but for whatever reason, they didn't franchise him. They'll make a play for him, but if I'm Calvin Ridley's agent, trying to make up for lost time, he feels like, he's gonna have a lot of offers.
Yeah, weird season for Calvin Ridley. Kind of felt a little underwhelming overall just because it was inconsistent, looked great at the start of the year. I think it's colored a bit too by like his final moment, potentially as a Jag, is the season basically coming off his hands in the final game against Tennessee where he just misses connecting with Lawrence on the long bomb. But I think there was enough there that he is going to get paid. It was also just a weird year in Jacksonville. Like Lawrence was never right physically, which obviously impacts Ridley a ton. So I think, and also people forget, he didn't play football for 3 years. Right. So he's coming back. So I think there's enough there.
He showed he still has the explosiveness. Yeah. He still has the route running. And to your point about the inconsistency, 6 different games with 20 or more fantasy points last year, 9 games under 10 fantasy points. So it was just really up and down. But to your point, given the lack of other viable free agents, and there's enough there on the tape that you can talk. There will be a team that talks itself into Calvin Ridley paying him a lot of money.
Yeah, he'll get probably upwards of $50 million guaranteed. With Ridley, one thing to know, if Jacksonville finds a way to get an extension done with him, that one of the picks that they traded to Atlanta would increase to a 2nd-round pick. So that is another key figure there. Jacksonville has to weigh, we're going to pay Calvin Ridley $50+ guaranteed $1 million and lose a 2nd-rounder, or do we just use that 2nd-rounder on one of the greatest wide receiver classes we've ever seen? That's a gamble. It's a gamble, but it's one they might be doing.
They have Christian Kirk. They have Evan Ingram in their passing game. Like, they feel good about where they are passing-wise, and so we'll see.
All right, as we said, Mike Evans back to the Bucs. Not a shock here. He is the first player in NFL history to begin his career with 10 straight 1,000-yard receiving seasons. Jason Light and the Bucs, Jay, clearly interested in keeping that going in Tampa for Mike Evans, which might be a signal that Baker Mayfield will ultimately be back.
Yeah, I think so. And Mike Evans has kind of become the epitome of a guy that you draft in fantasy leagues and you're not super excited. It's not a sexy pick. It's Mike Evans. You know exactly what he's going to do. It's going to be 1,200 yards, 10, 11 touchdowns, but he just does the same thing like clockwork. He's become almost just the most reliable receiver in the league in terms of you know exactly what you're going to get out of him every year if he's healthy.
Yeah, 1,000%, by the way. And by the way, he was a top 10 wide receiver on a points per game basis last year in fantasy. In terms of what he does this upcoming year, assuming Baker's back, he's right there, right there, as a top 15-ish guy. But good for Mike Evans, good for the Buccaneers. One of the best that ever do it.
A couple of tight end contracts. The Texans re-signed Dalton Schultz to a 3-year contract. He was one of 4 tight ends with 550-plus receiving yards in each of the last 4 seasons. Him, Kelsey, Kittle, Hawkinson. Hunter Henry, right before we got on, guys, he's back with the Patriots on a 3-year, $27 million deal. And Jonnu Smith will sign a 2-year deal with the Dolphins after being cut by the Falcons last week, Matthew.
That, to me, is the most interesting one. I'm glad Dalton Schultz is back with the Texans. He was productive last year. He should be. They have a bunch of young guys as well, so why not keep the veteran tight end for C.J. Stroud? He was tight end 11 on a points-per-game basis. That's about right. I think he's a top 12-ish guy. if you punt on tight end early in your draft, Dalton Schultz is a guy that you can get in the mid to late rounds. He'll be fine. He's fine on a weekly basis as well. Same with Hunter Henry, who was one of the few bright spots of an otherwise dismal Patriots offense last year. We'll see what happens with their, if Mac Jones is going to be their quarterback or whatever. But Hunter Henry is another guy who's, I thought that was a good signing by the Patriots. But Jonnu Smith, who for a tight end of his size is pretty fast.
Oh, yeah.
Actually.
He's really fast.
He can move. And so, we talked about this in terms of how many snaps Durham Smythe played last year for the Dolphins. Now, we didn't do much with them, but them signing Jonnu Smith, who is an athletic tight end, who is fast, he fits into the Dolphins mold of speed. So the starting tight end of one of the better offenses in football suddenly becomes kind of interesting as a sleeper.
Yep. Interesting as well in terms of the place that he left, where Kyle Pitts, his usage is now even more uncluttered. He'll almost certainly have a better quarterback situation, whoever comes in. Do you think Connor's anything left with Kyle Pitts, which is weird to say because he's barely been in the league, but where he's come from?
Well, I think number one, the usage for every great player or talent from Arthur Smith was puzzling, and that's jokes aside. Being serious, like you trickled down to Bijan Robinson, who's one of the best running back prospects we've evaluated. So that alone gives you hope. Once again, also the fact that, yes, you got a tight end that was in his way at times out of the way. That's big, too. And then the Falcons don't have a number 2 wide receiver right now.
Yeah.
So if they don't get that surefire guy, and they need a guy that could stretch the field, the targets are
Is
there.
he just physically kind of shot, though, Pitts, with the injuries that he's dealt with since he's come into the league?
He doesn't look as smooth as you would expect. It's not the straight line speed. It's the change of direction that's been very shocking.
We're going to make a joke, Matthew?
Yeah, I was just going to say, cut to Olamide Zacchaeus watching this at home going, what the hell, Connor? What the hell? What am I? Chopping liver over here? What did I do to you? What's for you?
Whoops.
Speaking of brag that I could pronounce Olamide Zacchaeus.
Yeah, it was good.
Good job.
Speaking of wide receivers in that mold, the Rams re-signed DeMarcus Robinson to a 1-year deal, which is he had a great
He did. This
stretch
is a
with the
sneaky
Rams.
good
Yes.
signing.
He's a monster.
He was a big-time factor in that offense down the stretch.
13 or more fantasy points in each of his last 5 games in the season, not counting that Week 18 game where they all took it off. 8 end zone targets over that stretch. Really seemed to find something with Matthew Stafford. DeMarcus Robinson is a guy that when he has gotten an opportunity has produced. He hasn't always gotten it. Baltimore, he was in and out of the lineup, but again, seems to have found his way to a role in the Rams as so many teams were concentrated on Kupp and Nakua. Robinson would get deep for stuff, and was good during the playoff game against the Lions as well.
Yep.
The Ravens re-signed wide receiver Nelson Aguilar to a 1-year contract, and Jay, I hate to tell you this one, although you already know, the Saints will release Michael Thomas.
What? They released him?
Small violin.
Maybe he comes to my Giants.
He's been on. His Twitter is a wild ride right now. By the way.
We don't want to.
No.
His Twitter is a wild ride. I'll just say this. While he may not be on the Saints, he's still on Jay's fantasy team. Jay has not
He's
released
your
him.
keeper for next year.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
We don't even do keepers, but we'll make an exception for you.
I'll keep him over Christian McCaffrey or something. Also, he hasn't left my heart either. Michael Thomas, he will forever stay there. Yeah.
All right, well, that's one person at the desk. The Vikings.
Question for you, quick question.
Yes, Matthew.
All right, you're on a ship, and you only have 3 life jackets, and you suddenly ship is sinking. Okay, and on the ship are your 3 children, your wife, Michael Thomas, and Puka Nakua. Who gets the 3 life jackets?
All right, well, let's do the 2 easy ones. My oldest child, Ella, and Michael Thomas.
Okay.
They're the first 2, and then I'd have to choose between Puka and the baby. Yeah, Remy's out.
So your wife wasn't even under consideration.
No, she can't go. She can't.
And Remy.
She can't run routes, and she's not a child, so she's out.
Yeah. Well, and by the way, the other thing is that in theory, right? Like she's probably not going to go dump into the water to save Puka Nakua, but Remy, you got a shot at saving.
That's fair.
Right? She'll jump into the water and do whatever she can to save Remy.
Yeah.
So
the issue is would if I threw Remy to Michael Thomas, would he stay healthy long enough to catch up? That's the things we got to.
Oh, that was really good. All right.
Good question.
I think you don't save Puka because he was maybe the nicest person we met during Super Bowl week and the best athlete. So he would be the best person to save people.
Probably could say, he would probably save people.
He would save people.
He would probably take off the life jacket and put it on your wife or one of your children.
Decent person, Puka Nakua. Yeah.
All right.
High on the decency spectrum.
Surprised, by the way, that the 2 of you got along so well, given how decent he is.
Yes,
and how you are
my
not.
firm position against decency.
Opposites attract.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.